Before we get into the episode, let's quickly recap what we'll see. Ramsay Snow tortured Theon at the Dreadfort. Yara assembles army on the Iron Islands to recover her brother Theon. House Frey cleaning after Red Wedding at the Twins. Arya journey in Riverlands. Sansa first step to friendship with her husband in King's Landing. Davos at Dragonstone tests his newfound literacy on Stannis' correspondence. Bran with his group go beyond the wall. Daenerys Targaryen's triumph in Yunkai and called Missa. Now, let's jump into the episode. Ramsay Snow tortured Theon at the Dreadfort. At the Dreadfort, Ramsay Snow enjoys his breakfast of a thick sausage while cruelly taunting Theon about his recent emasculation, pointing to Theon's sewn-up blood-stained trousers. As Theon desperately begs for death to escape his torment, Ramsay coldly refuses, insisting that Theon is more valuable alive. Noting Theon's unpleasant odor, Ramsay decides to give him a new name, Reek. Although Theon initially resists, repeatedly declaring himself as Theon Greyjoy, Ramsay's relentless beating finally breaks him, and Theon submits, accepting the name Reek. Yara assembles army on the Iron Islands to recover her brother Theon. On Pike, Balon Greyjoy reads a message from Lord Bolton's bastard, while his daughter, Yara Greyjoy, cautiously opens a crudely carved box bearing the Greyjoy kraken's sigil. Ramsay's letter reveals that the box contains Theon's favorite toy, a cruel reference to Theon's mutilation. The message warns that the Ironborn must withdraw from the north by the next full moon, or face receiving more of Theon's body parts. Additionally, any Ironborn who remain will be flayed alive, just as Ramsay flayed Theon's 20 Ironborn followers at Winterfell after they surrendered, despite promising them safe passage. It is also revealed that Ramsay Snow and his Bolton soldiers were responsible for burning Winterfell to the ground, having sent false reports through Roose Bolton to Robb Stark, blaming the Ironborn. As part of the Boltons' long-planned betrayal of the Starks before the Red Wedding, Balon Greyjoy remains indifferent to Theon's plight, blaming him for defying orders and Yara's practical advice by staying at Winterfell. He also dismisses Theon's value, as the contents of the box confirm he can no longer continue the Greyjoy line. However, Yara refuses to share her father's cold indifference. Determined to save her last living brother, she declares her plan to take her fastest ship and 50 of her best men, sail around Westeros, storm the Dreadfort, and rescue Theon. At the Twins, the brutal aftermath of the Red Wedding continues to unfold. While northern lords are slaughtered inside the main hall, House Frey soldiers ambush the unsuspecting Stark army in its camp outside. Caught off guard by the betrayal of their supposed allies, the northern soldiers are massacred, with tents set ablaze and many men burned alive. Frey soldiers mercilessly mutilate the dead and dying, as Roose Bolton watches the slaughter from one of the twin towers. Amidst the chaos, Sandor Clegane attempts to escape on horseback with an unconscious Arya Stark, disguising their flight by carrying a Frey banner. As Arya regains consciousness, they witness a horrifying sight. Frey men parading Robb Stark's desecrated corpse, his head replaced with the severed head of his direwolf, Grey Wind. Drunk on victory, the Freys chant mockingly "King in the North" as they parade the body around the castle, to the cheers and laughter of their soldiers. Sandor, horrified, clutches a stunned Arya and rides away, undisturbed thanks to the Frey banner. The following morning, as servants clean up the blood-soaked Great Hall, Lords Walder Frey and Roose Bolton gloat over their triumph and the rewards of their treachery. Frey is to become Lord of Riverrun, with House Frey replacing House Tully as the Lannisters' vassals in the Riverlands. Bolton is appointed Warden of the North, replacing the Starks, though Tywin Lannister plans to eventually pass the title to a future Lannister heir from Tyrion Lannister and Sansa Stark. Bolton expresses concern that Brynden Tully escaped the massacre, but Walder dismisses the threat, noting that the Blackfish and the remaining Tully forces at Riverrun are isolated and outnumbered by the combined might of the Lannisters, Boltons, and Freys. Despite Walder's confidence, Bolton remains wary. He reflects on Robb Stark's failings, viewing him as an arrogant and politically inept young king, who refused to heed Roose's counsel and make the hard choices necessary to win. When Walder asks if Bolton plans to rule the North from Winterfell, Bolton admits he might once it is rebuilt. Walder's curiosity leads him to ask how Winterfell became a ruin, prompting Bolton to reveal that his bastard, Ramsay Snow, tricked the Ironborn occupiers into surrendering with false promises of mercy, only to then destroy the castle in his own brutal fashion. In the Riverlands, a grief-stricken Arya Stark and Sandor Clegane ride away from the devastation at the Twins. As they pass near a small group of Frey soldiers, one boasts about helping to sever Grey Wind's head and attach it to Robb Stark's body. Arya, quietly seething, approaches them with a sweet demeanor, asking to warm herself by their fire and offering the coin given to her by Jachan Hagar as payment. When one of the Frey men leans in to examine the coin, Arya swiftly stabs him in the neck. Momentarily surprised, the Hound quickly dispatches the remaining soldiers, before demanding to know where Arya got the knife. She calmly reveals that it's his. Frustrated, he scolds her for not warning him before taking such action. As the Hound grumbles while disposing of the bodies, Arya retrieves her coin and softly whispers, "Valar Morghulis." Meanwhile, in King's Landing, Tyrion Lannister and Sansa Stark stroll through the gardens. As they walk, two passing gentlemen snigger at Tyrion, either mocking his dwarf stature or the rumors that his marriage remains unconsummated. Sansa encourages him to ignore them, but Tyrion assures her that he's accustomed to such ridicule, having lived his whole life as a dwarf. He adds that unlike Joffrey, he prefers to wait patiently for the right moment to humiliate his tormentors. Amused, Sansa joins in his scheming and suggests sheep shifting, secretly placing sheep's dung deep within a mattress, a prank Arya once played on her, so the victim constantly wakes up to the foul smell. Tyrion is entertained but realizes that Sansa has misheard the term shit. Before he can explain the mix-up, Podrick Payne arrives to summon him to a small council meeting. In Tywin Lannister's chambers, Grand Maester Pycelle nervously hands Tyrion a coded message from Lord Frey. Joffrey, unable to contain his excitement, gleefully reveals that Robb and Catelyn Stark are dead. Tyrion is visibly shaken by the news, already anticipating the political fallout, but Joffrey dismisses his concerns. With cruel delight, Joffrey declares his intention to serve Robb's severed head to Sansa at his upcoming wedding feast. The small council members are visibly uncomfortable with the suggestion, and even Varys reminds Joffrey that Sansa is now his aunt by marriage, deserving at least basic respect. A visibly embarrassed Cersei forces a strained smile and assures the small council that Joffrey was merely joking about serving Robb Stark's head at his wedding feast. Joffrey, puzzled by her denial, insists that he meant every word and fully intends to carry out the gruesome act. Tyrion firmly forbids it, reminding Joffrey that Sansa is no longer his to torment. Enraged, Joffrey declares that as king, everyone is his to torment. Tywin calmly counters that any man who must constantly remind others he is king is no true king. Incensed, Joffrey lashes out, accusing Tywin of cowardice for hiding at Castle Rock during Robert Baratheon's rebellion against the Targaryens. The council holds its breath awaiting Tywin's reaction. Unfazed, Tywin coolly declares that the king must be tired, and instructs Cersei to escort him to bed. Joffrey weakly protests but ultimately leaves with his mother, and Tywin orders Pycelle to administer a sedative to ensure Joffrey sleeps. Once the council is dismissed, Tywin retains Tyrion, who dryly remarks that the Lord of the Seven Kingdoms has been sent to bed without supper. Tyrion confronts Tywin, deducing that his father orchestrated the Red Wedding, as Walder Frey lacked the courage to act alone. Tywin openly admits it, arguing that the Northerners will remember the massacre and be deterred from future rebellion. Tyrion expresses disgust at choosing a wedding for such slaughter, but Tywin questions why killing thousands in battle is considered nobler than murdering a few guests at a wedding. Tywin shifts the conversation to Tyrion's failure to consummate his marriage with Sansa, urging him to do his duty for the family's sake. At Dragonstone, Davos practices his new literacy skills by reading Stannis' correspondence, though he grumbles about the strange spelling of the word knight. Shireen Baratheon offers to read him more stories about Aegon the Conqueror, but Davos politely declines. His attention is drawn away by the sound of horns, signaling that Melisandre is preparing to sacrifice Gendry. Alarmed, Davos confronts Stannis, pleading for the boy's life. However, Stannis remains resolute, persuaded by Melisandre's claim that Gendry's king's blood will fuel the magic needed to vanquish his enemies and secure the Iron Throne. Unable to change Stannis' mind, Davos takes matters into his own hands. He secretly frees Gendry, providing him with a rowboat and instructions to navigate his way back to King's Landing. When Stannis discovers Davos' actions, he is furious and sentences him to death. Davos, however, produces a letter from the Night's Watch, warning of the impending threat beyond the wall. He urges Stannis to recognize his duty to the realm, insisting that the true war is not for the Iron Throne, but against the gathering darkness in the north. Melisandre burns the letter in the flames, affirming its message. She declares that the War of the Five Kings is inconsequential compared to the true battle that looms beyond the wall. Acknowledging that Davos has an essential role to play in the coming conflict, she persuades Stannis to spare him. Stannis, though still simmering with frustration, sarcastically remarks on the irony of the Lord of Light choosing Davos, the man who often mocks the deity, for a higher purpose in the fate of the realm. Outside the gates of Yunkai, Daenerys Targaryen, surrounded by her trusted advisors, anxiously waits for the city's slaves to emerge. She worries that the slaves in Yunkai, unlike those in Astapor, may have grown accustomed to their chains, fearing they might not embrace their freedom as eagerly. As the gates finally open, the freed slaves step out, cautiously at first. Missandei begins to speak of Daenerys as the liberator, but Daenerys cuts her off, asserting that the choice to seek freedom belongs to the slaves themselves. Then one of the freedmen steps forward, reaches out his hand, and calls out, "Missa." The word is quickly echoed by another, then another, until the entire crowd is chanting Missa, their voices growing in strength and unity. Confused, Daenerys turns to Missandei, who explains that Missa means mother in the old Gascari language. The crowd's chanting intensifies, and the former slaves begin to move toward Daenerys. Though the Unsullied step forward to protect their queen, Daenerys orders them to stand down. As the chant of Missa continues, Daenerys is lifted and embraced by the grateful former slaves, overwhelmed by their newfound hope.